So welcome back to another podcast episode. We've had a really great response to the first podcast episode that we put out. So we're getting together again to hopefully share some more stuff that's going to be helpful. But first of all, introductions. Caroline, tell us about who you are.
Hi, thanks Rachel. I'm Caroline Walker. I'm a doctor. I'm a psychiatrist, an NHS trained psychiatrist and therapist, and I specialise in the wellbeing of doctors. I founded The Joyful Doctor, which is an organisation that's all about helping the wellbeing of doctors. So as you can imagine, at the moment we're pretty busy supporting doctors through this really challenging time of COVID-19.
Thanks. And I'm Dr. Rachel Morris. I'm a GP turned executive coach. I founded an organisation and created the Shapes Toolkit, which is a training programme to help professionals in high stress jobs like doctors with well-being, productivity and managing their resilience. And I also host the podcast You Are Not a Frog, which is perhaps where you've found this today. So Caroline, firstly, how's your last few days been? How's the weekend been?
Yeah, I think like for many, it's been quite challenging, actually quite tough. I'm feeling a lot of the same emotional stuff that everyone's feeling at the moment. You know, I was feeling a bit overwhelmed, quite tired, quite emotional. Some of it coming out a bit sideways, you know, a bit snappy with those I love, and just really starting to try to kind of get to grips with what's going on, because it's been really quite a phenomenally crazy week here, you know, in the UK as COVID has really started to hit. So yeah, it's not been an easy time for me, just like it's not been an easy time for many out there, I think, at the moment.
It's really tough, isn't it? It does feel like things have massively accelerated and we've had more change in the last, I think, 2 or 3 days than we've had in the sort of preceding 4 to 6 weeks, really.
Yeah, I've had a lot of doctors saying to me, you know, I feel like I'm in a disaster movie, or I feel like, you know, I can't believe it's just been a week, because so much has changed and it's changing still. And I think this early stage is going to be quite, you know, quite an emotional roller coaster for a lot of us.
Yeah, I know last time we talked about this sort of low level anxiety, and for me I've noticed that it's not actually been low level anymore. I found that towards the end of last week I was feeling I was losing my appetite,
Yeah,
waking up in the morning feeling really quite emotional, and had a couple of occasions where I just sort of sat in my car and had a little bit of a bit of a big cry, actually, just because I felt the enormity of the situation, and also it was a feeling of real sadness.
Yeah, I had a cry over the weekend myself, and similarly, I've noticed it's having an impact on my, you know, my physiology. So, excuse me, sorry. So yeah, loss of appetite, disturbed sleep, and I'm not the only one. I'm hearing that from a lot of doctors, and I guess I just want to normalize that for us at this point in time, because that's how we're supposed to feel when something of this magnitude comes along, and we're all kind of having to just deal with it. You know, this first week, our bodies kind of just go into a little bit of a shock and a bit of a meltdown, and it takes a little while for that to readjust. So I would say, if that anyone's experiencing that, you know, please don't panic. It's quite normal, and yeah, just if you can, just putting in a little bits of routine where you can to kind of buffer that. But yeah, you talked about sadness. I think we're starting to see the early signs of grief actually coming through already. Even though we may be not losing that many people yet in the UK to COVID itself, we're starting to, but I think we're really grieving a lot of other things, like the life that we were living up until a week ago, you know, things like that, and grieving those that we have lost around the world, colleagues as included, and the grief to come. It's kind of like, I think that's what we're seeing, because it's extremes of all the grief emotions.
Mm-hmm. It's, you know, there's this huge sense of loss, isn't there? Like you say, it's not necessarily just yet about the loss of human life, but, you know, for my kids, they've lost their summer and they've lost all the lovely things they were planning on doing. And, you know, I particularly found it very difficult when I said goodbye to my friends for the last time. I mean, it was just a really silly little thing. I thought, why am I upset about this? But I guess it was everything else coming out through that one thing.
Yeah, absolutely. We're all saying goodbyes at the moment, aren't we? You know, to people that we're not actually losing contact with most of the time. So we're these are people that are still in our lives, but we're sort of having to separate from them temporarily. So it's like a big grief or a loss, in a kind of strange kind of way, because now we're having to get used to sort of seeing people online instead of, or speaking by phone more than face to face. And so the relationships, all of our relationships are shifting, aren't they, around each other. And yeah, the kids, I mean, they're losing their routine and their structure, and the way that their lives are kind of chunked down into terms and holidays. We're losing our routine of the way that we work, and we're sadly starting to see the loss of life as well. And I think it's important we don't shy away from acknowledging that at this early stage, because that is impacting. We're reading very sad stories that are really, hitting many of us right in our hearts, and when I think it's something you can identify with, like a colleague, you hear about a doctor or a nurse that's died, or perhaps somebody that's died that you can relate to them as someone in your family. I think we all start to grieve.
So how do we cope with this grief? How do we, we've all got to carry on, and many of us are frontline workers, so we can't just sit at home and maybe go through the natural process. What can we do?
It's a really good question, because we talked last time about anxiety and how you can sort of have these strategies where if you notice it, you can perhaps change it, distract yourself, etc. But grief doesn't quite work like that. I think for grief, the important thing, if you can, is to realise that it is grief, so to name it. And so we'll talk about the different emotions that show up in grief today. So naming it and realizing it is grief is actually really helpful. And then whenever you can, allowing it to just flow and come out, because grief is something that has to come out. It has to be felt. It can't be put to one side, or it can be put to one side temporarily, but if you do that, it kind of stays stuck and you can get into trouble down the line. So if you're finding yourself with the different emotions, it's important to try and let those flow if you can. As much as is possible in your day-to-day life. If, say, you're in the middle of a meeting and you don't really want to burst into tears, for example, you can temporarily just put a little lid on the box, the little grief box, just hold it to one side. As long as you come back to it later, you go off and have a little break, or you go home and you just get that little box out again and open it and go and feel the feelings, then that's okay. That's a reasonable strategy to use more term, but hard to do.
That to me sounds quite scary, because a lot of us like to put the lid on our emotions, go, okay, oh, great.
Yeah.
I've just suppressed that. Thank God for that. That's solved. And I can just now file it on my shelf, so I don't need to open it later. So you're saying, actually, it's really important we go back.
It is and it isn't. So I would qualify that and say, actually, for many of us, we're going to have to put lots of little things in lots of little boxes and put them on the shelf for quite a while. Like, we're going to need to put some of this stuff aside to be able to get on with the job that we're doing at the moment. So I think for some of us, we're going to have this at the end of this process, as things start to kind of settle down and calm down, we're going to have a lot of boxes that we might need some help kind of getting down off the shelf and looking at and allowing room for. But what I'm talking about is, if you say you just feel it like we did, we felt a bit tearful over the weekend. Sorry, I'm struggling a bit with my headphones today. If you're struggling like we were at the weekend, and you feel a bit tearful, just having a little cry, absolutely fine. Allow yourself to do it. Try not to put everything in boxes at this point, but where you need to, it's just about noticing that's what you're doing, and you'll come back to it at some point with support if you need it.
So I think both of us have experienced it as sadness and crying. Not everyone experiences it in the same way, in the same type of emotion. What other emotions might you expect to see?
Yeah, so grief is a real roller coaster of lots of different emotions at different times. And we used to think that it was quite predictable, that you kind of went through these stages in very predictable order. But actually what we've seen really now is that it comes and goes in lots of different stages. But the main emotions we tend to see initially are shock and disbelief. I think we're all in that phase at the moment, like what's going on. Then you get anger, is really common. You get a bit of bargaining. So that's the sort of thinking doctors are doing now. Like, if I just work a bit harder, then maybe I can make this all better. Or, you know, if I'm just really good for the rest of my life, God, please, you know, help my loved one to survive this, or that kind of bargaining with life.
Yeah.
There's sadness, as we've touched on, which can be really profound and really quite, you know, draining and really tough. Then there's acceptance. So eventually what we hope to get to with grief eventually is a sort of place of acceptance, a place of life has changed and this thing has gone, but we've kind of adjusted and we're able to kind of get on with our lives as well as we can. So those are the main sort of emotions we see: shock, anger, sadness, a bit of bargaining, and acceptance. But they come in waves, and they come unpredictably, and they come like 1 minute you can be feeling fine, the next minute you've got, you know, raging anger, then you're fine again, and then you're really sad. So it's about riding those waves at this stage.
So that's interesting to me. How do you deal with anger? Because sadness is one thing. You can go and have a little cry in the cupboard or in your bedroom or whatever.
Yeah.
But I've seen this a bit in our household, getting quite snappy with each other, it's fair to say, and feeling quite angry. And what you don't want to do is take it out on other people's. And so how do you experience anger in a helpful way?
Yeah, really common question, great question. And I do a lot of anger work with my doctors in everyday life, actually, because this is a problem, something that we really struggle with, because I think it's, there's all these beliefs, aren't there, about anger, that it's a bad thing, that we shouldn't show it, but in fact, it's an incredibly normal, healthy emotion. I get angry all the time. We all get angry all the time, pretty much on a daily basis in normal circumstances. But at the moment, there's a lot to be angry about. So I'm seeing a lot of anger. How do we deal with it? So it's about, again, it's a bit like grief. You have to get it out. It's an emotion that has to flow out of you. If you keep it in, it causes problems. That's when people get really, and they'll, like, the lid will pop off without, you know, warning. So it's about getting it out, but getting it out in ways that are not going to harm you or anyone else. And I advise people experimenting. So for me, I'm a puncher. So when with my physical anger, I like to punch. So I'll get something like, you see my cushions behind me here, I'll punch those because it's not going to harm me, but it's going to get that anger out in a really healthy way. So I think about physical expression. So some people are kickers, stompers, pushers, you know, and you'll probably get a sense of what you are, because when you've lost it in the past, you probably, like, maybe you threw something across a room, or you know, shoved something away, or you stomped, or, you know, so just think back, okay, what am I likely to be? And then do that thing, but do it in a healthy way, and do it pretty regularly at the moment, I would say. So I'd be punching stuff at the moment, 2-3 times a week probably, just to get that anger out. But it's about punching the pillow rather than the brick wall.
Yes. Or somebody, or someone else.
Yeah. And then
or
that's
one's husband.
That's the that's the physical stuff. Then let's think about maybe writing and vocal. So we're very vocal as human beings. So I like shouting or screaming if I'm angry. So again, I do that into a pillow, or I'll do it in the car where no one can hear it. So it's doing it in a way that's not going to upset you or anyone else, but just gets it out. And writing, really powerful. I'm seeing a lot of doctors at the moment writing angry messages on social media, and I think it's absolutely normal to be angry and want to get that anger out. What I suggest is express, don't send. So write it in, like, Word or something like that. Write it, get all that emotion out, write exactly what you want to say, use all the words you wouldn't never use, you know, all the swear words and stuff, and then don't send it. Basically, don't send it, and then take a bit of a breather, and then decide what you're going to put out there on your comment. Does that make sense? So express it, don't send it.
That 100% makes sense. So I've been looking at a lot of stuff on social media, and while I do think it's important that people know what's going on, a lot of the underlying tone is very angry, and I just wonder how that is helping it might help the person writing it to express it, but the reader, it then agitates the reader, and you're sort of perpetuating this spiral of anger rather than calming it down with logic and compassion.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would say it's normal to be angry, and I think a certain amount of expressing it like that is actually pretty human. And I think we have to give ourselves a bit of
Yeah.
leeway at the moment. I think we're all going to get a bit irritable. I shouted at my partner last week, and I think particularly as families are kind of having to be more isolated together and in close proximity, perhaps not able to get out and have the space they need at the moment. I think there's a lot more anger being directed at different people. I think it's not about kind of trying to change the anger. I think it's about venting the anger out in healthy ways. That kind of takes the pressure out. It's a bit like a pressure cooker. Yes. With a lid on it. If it builds up and up and up and up and up, then the lid's going to pop off and it's going to hurt someone. But if you can just tap off the pressure regularly, then you won't be quite so irritable. You'll have that little bit of a second of choice between when you're just about to shout at someone, but you go, oh no, I'm going to just go next door, or I'm just going to go and like take a time out. And so that's what we want to build in. It's that moment of choice between getting angry and acting on it. We want a little bit of a gap, otherwise it's...
And presumably physical exercise can actually really help with this as well.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, absolutely. Because it's a very physical energy, anger. It's a very, So that's why I say to people, think about the physical, think about the verbal, and think about maybe writing if you're a writer, or drawing, or something, something that's expressive in that way. But yeah, it's a very physical thing. So physical exercise, very important. Yeah. Very helpful.
So one thing I've noticed in me is when I've been feeling angry a little bit at the end of last week and over the weekend, and actually maybe a little bit this morning as well, I then start to believe some of my angry thoughts.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm thinking, oh, well, why isn't so-and-so doing this to help? Or why are kids doing this? And that means that blah and blah. And I'm in this state, and I had to force myself to stop this morning, just think, actually, Rachel, calm down. You're not thinking logically here. So how do you suggest people, because I think that is the danger, isn't it? That we confuse our emotions and our thoughts during the emotions for the truth.
Absolutely. And we talked about this last time, didn't we? That thought fusion that happens where we think our thoughts are real and they're not. Actually, I've been using a metaphor lately a lot that I got from one of my Joyful Doctor coaches. He's fantastic. Giles P. Croft, he's a surgeon, now he's a coach. And he talks about snow globes. And you know how you shake a snow globe and all the snow kind of goes, and you can't see what's inside the snow globe anymore because it's just snow. And that's a bit like what our thinking gets like when we're angry, isn't it? It's like all these sort of thoughts going around in our head. We're shaking, our head, and we can't see the wood for the trees. And what do you have to do with a snow globe to settle the snow down? Nothing, right? You just put it
leave
down.
it.
You just leave it. So if we just leave ourselves, if we can give ourselves a bit of a time out, so this is where something like a little, like those sort of count to 10 or go next door for 10 minutes, or those sort of strategies where you just let your snow globe settle, then you can see what's in the snow globe, which might be, oh, okay, I just got a bit angry there, maybe I need to go and apologize, or okay, maybe I'm just upset about something else that's going on that I need to just share.
That's really good advice. And I'm just thinking, for anyone who's finding these outbursts of anger at work, what sort of things could they do to just take those tiny little breaks to let that snow globe settle down? I mean, I'm thinking, go lock yourself in the toilet and play a game of Tetris or something like that. I don't know. Do you have any suggestions?
Yeah, exactly, stuff like that. It doesn't need to be big, it doesn't need to be fancy, it just needs to be something to take. And it's about taking yourself out of that situation. So I described, something happens, you get angry and you react. We need to just put a gap. So if something happening and you feel your anger going, it's just taking yourself away. So whether that's mentally taking yourself away, counting to 10, remember what you had for dinner last night. It doesn't matter what you think about, but just shifting your attention onto something different, or whether you physically take yourself away. So you go out to the toilet and play a bit of Tetris, or you go for a little walk around the building or around the house, or so it's only has to be a very small, simple intervention. It doesn't have to be anything fancy, because we're a snow globe. We're going to settle if we give ourselves enough time. I think the mistake we sometimes make, I certainly do this, is I'll get really angry, I'll notice it's happening, and then I'll take myself away for a bit, and then I'm like, but I'm still quite angry. But I kind of think I've calmed down.
Yeah.
So, I'll just go back in. And
I'm totally calm now. Everything, I'm really definitely thinking logically, and you were definitely in the wrong.
You were definitely in the wrong. And then you're right back into that situation again, aren't you? So if that happens, we're human, we all do it. Just, again, step back, but just take a little bit longer this time. And we all know it, don't we? We know when the feeling has passed and we're not going to snap. We just know that. So waiting for that feeling, and it's difficult work. I think we're in unprecedented times, and doctors are under phenomenal pressure already, and we are all going to be feeling this mishmash of emotions, and anger is going to be one of them that comes out, and people they're gonna snap at each other. They're going to. So I think what we can do for each other is to be okay with that and hold that and normalize it a bit, not get too work. Just be like, okay, we're all struggling here. Let's take a time out. Let's take a 5-minute breather. And for the team, and I think as we can let each other know that we all do it, it makes that person feel less ashamed and less.
I was just thinking that the kindest, most compassionate thing we can do for each other at the moment is to make allowances and give someone a very long rope. Just say, you can shout at me, that's fine. I am not going to take offence or hold it against you when you seem completely irrational, you're expressing anger, you're acting in a way that I know is not like you. That's exactly how I want to be treated. We talk a lot about social distancing and 2-meter rule at the moment, and I think it's almost like we have to have a 2-meter psychological rule as well. It's like I'm just going to give you that little bit longer rope because I know that you're struggling. Like my little boy, 7, he's been sort of a little bit angry the last week or so, and I think he's just picking up on all the stuff that's bouncing around in the air, and nothing major, but I didn't quite come down on him quite as hard as I would normally. It was like, okay, I kind of see that, so giving each other that little bit of allowance and giving ourselves that bit of space, I think that's something doctors really struggle with. We hold ourselves to very high standards, and we're going to continue to do that through this crisis. And if we do that, we're going to really struggle because we cannot maintain our normal level of performance and our normal level of behavior and our normal level of etiquette in the extraordinary circumstances. We can do it to some degree, but we're all gonna sort of just need a little bit of wiggle room, I think, and kindness to allow for that. And I love your metaphor of the pressure cooker and just letting off the steam in little bits. I think just talking to, maybe teams can talk to each other about how their pressure cooker is at the moment and what sort of emotions are in there that might need letting out, and how can they do that for each other, and what sort of allowances they need to make for each other right now. I think that'd be really helpful, wouldn't it?
I mean, we've seen a lot, haven't we, in the last week, teams using sort of 5-minute check-ins at the beginning and end of shifts, and actually it's okay, use a minute or two of that time to just acknowledge, we're all at the end of our tethers here, we're all getting a bit frayed and snapping, and it's okay, we're all feeling it, and we're going to try and get through this together. And it's something just that simple, literally 30 seconds of just acknowledging it can be really powerful for a team. And if you do lose it, setting an example and a role model, whatever level you're at, if you can say, oh gosh, sorry guys, I'm really at the end of my tether, I've had enough, do you mind if I just take 2 minutes out here? Because people will understand, they will get it, right? We get it. It's extraordinary times they are, and it's tough out there.
I think it's really important to not only do that for everybody, make allowances for team, make allowances for yourself, but also the point you just made a few minutes ago, that we're not going to recover as quickly as we possibly used to. So that anger or the sadness, it may take quite a while for that to work its way out of the system. So don't think you're okay too soon. Or someone else is like, just because someone's come in and gone, I'm sorry guys, I lost it a bit there, but I'm fine now. Don't assume that person is genuinely going to be completely fine then.
Absolutely, 100%. And this is going to take us weeks and months at least to get through, right? And because the stressor is ongoing as well. It's not like in a natural disaster, for example, where it's something's happened and it's happened at day one and then everything unfolds. This is an evolving situation where we're getting constant new stresses happening. So this is going to be ongoing for some time. So yeah, we're going to get good days and bad days, good moments and bad moments, and I think at this early stage we need to just keep it really simple, really kind, just normalize that this is tough and we're all feeling it right now.
So can I ask you, Caroline, because what I've observed is that there is quite a difference between people working on the front line and perhaps the rest of the population who are now told that they need to be at home, social distancing. Please don't go out of your home if you don't absolutely have to. And actually, if you're just in your home, yes, we've lost schooling, we've lost all sorts of things, but we're not seeing what's going on out there. And I wonder whether frontline workers are just at that little bit further on in their grief and loss than the rest of the population. And that's going to be quite difficult to deal with if one half of the family is one half of the partnership maybe is a frontline worker and the other one isn't. So what advice would you have about that sort of thing?
Yeah, we're seeing that, right? There's a real mismatch between, but I think, and it's totally understandable because people are experiencing different things. So for a lot of people, this hasn't bitten yet. And I think it will start to over the next 2 to 3 weeks. People will start to see more impact and more, it'll start to hit home a bit more as their loved ones get sick, as they're in ITU and they start to worry about if there's going to be enough ventilators and all that sort of thing. It's going to start to really, amplify up. But at the moment, there is still quite a bit of a mismatch. I think I'm not so worried, to be honest, about the family members supporting frontline workers, because what I'm seeing is they really get it, actually. They can see what their loved ones are going through and they're scared. They're sending their loved one out every day into this battlefield, essentially, to use a warfare metaphor. They're sending them out knowing that they might, be at higher risk of infection, that they're going to be seeing and going through awful things. They're seeing their loved ones come back into the home broken and exhausted and scared and all of these. So I think those people are probably already seeing the effects and the impact. It's perhaps the people that it hasn't touched their life yet. And actually I think that's really normal. It's very hard for those of us on the side that are seeing the impact it's having, because we kind of want to shake people and go, come on, take this seriously, people are dying, and that's where a lot of anger and fear and frustration is coming out. But those people aren't, if they knew what we know, they would be behaving differently. But they're not there yet, and they haven't seen it yet, and it's coming and they're going to see it, but they're not quite there yet. And I think that's going to be one of the challenges of this whole thing through COVID, is that people are going to be at different emotional points at different times. And we're trying, aren't we, to try and help doctors at the point at which they're at right now. But even amongst doctors, some are still at home, not doing much yet, feeling guilty. Some are on the front line, overwhelmed. Some are waiting, preparing. And that's, it's going to be one of the challenges, I think, for us to be able to make sure people know that whatever stage you're at, whatever you're feeling, it's okay. There is help.
So express your emotions. Take time when you're experiencing those emotions, and make allowances for yourself and allowances for other people.
Yeah, which is a big ask, right? When we're all under phenomenal pressure. But and if there's stuff that's a bit too much to deal with right now, popping it in a little box is okay. That's really normal and okay. But just being aware that that's what you're doing, so that you can then come back to it with help and support at a later date. Maybe that night when you have a sob on your partner, or that next week when you're just so exhausted it all comes out, or maybe in a few months' time when you take some time for yourself to sit and talk with a professional about what's happened. I think it's about not kind of burying it and never looking at it ever again. And if you can, letting the emotions come through as they come through, that's going to help the grief to pass a bit more quickly.
And what about people who are on their own, who maybe don't have a partner to come home to every night and express stuff. Because there's lots of people out there, there's lots of people who are doing training in different parts of the country, and they might physically be separated from people at the moment, and that's got to be really hard. What would you suggest for them?
It's really hard, actually. I'm really glad you brought that up, because so often we talk about, oh, just, cry on your partner's shoulder, like I just did, right? And actually it's like, well, hang on a minute, I don't have anyone, you might not even have a cat. So yeah, it is. First of all, I just want to say there's a lot of people out there in that situation. You're not alone. I think we can try and connect through, phone and through online and through social media and things like that in a positive way. So you don't have to be alone at this time. I think I suppose I just want to acknowledge that for those people, I think the reason that's quite hard right now is because this is perhaps something that's an unmet need in their life, or a situation that might be difficult for them generally. And it's almost like it's shining a spotlight on it.
Right.
So I am hearing from a lot of doctors who live alone who are saying, who've been actually either lonely for quite some time, or wanting to get a partner, or wanting to live with friends, but not being able to make that happen. And this has just kind of shown a massive spotlight and gone, you're really alone now. And people are, we're starting to talk about making advanced directives and things, big things like, what I would say is you may feel alone, but you are not alone. Please contact somebody in some shape or form. Even if it can't be face to face, right now we all need human contact. And if you can't think of a single person in your life to contact me or Rachel.
Yeah.
Honestly, and we can talk to you, we can put you in touch with other people. There's so many people out there. I can't tell you how much is going on behind the scenes to support people with what they're going through in the next few weeks and months. So I think it's normalize again. I know I say that a lot, but it's okay to be feeling it right now, and you may feel alone, but you're not alone, and there are ways you can connect.
Yeah, I was just wondering about maybe being a bit more intentional in the next few days, and finding someone else in the same situation. You'll know people, and saying actually maybe once or twice a week we could get on Zoom with each other, just as a well-being check-in. You could be my well-being buddy about, how are you doing this week? What do you need? Just a listening ear.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. Absolutely great idea. I think things like that are going to be really lovely sort of side effects of this whole thing, aren't they? Amazing friendships and connections, and people who maybe were feeling a bit lonely and isolated before can actually connect through this awful time. So yeah, a great idea.
Yeah, we've also started a coronavirus doctors wellbeing Facebook group. So if anybody wants to join that, and if they want to post that they maybe that's a good forum where we can buddy people up as well, perhaps.
Yeah, absolutely. Join, send in a request and join. 100%. Just say, Tea and Empathy is another great place for that kind of connection. A Facebook group for doctors and any NHS staff, actually.
Right.
So yeah, our coronavirus wellbeing support group on Facebook, or the Tea and Empathy Facebook group, they're both excellent places to just.
We'll put those links in the show notes. So we've talked about the different emotions we're going to feel through grief, sort of sadness and loss. Well, a bit of probably denial at the beginning. I think most of us are through the denial. Shock, between shock, maybe past denial, grief, anger. Grief is the thing, but the emotions, anger, sadness. One thing I've noticed with some people is this sort of massive amount of energy that I've just got to do something, and I'm going to do something, and I carry on doing something, and I'm slightly worried about those people because they carry on, and then they crash.
Yeah. A lot of doctors do that. Yeah. We're very high functioning, and we were just sharing, weren't we, before this recording, that I wanted to just take a few minutes to breathe, because it's very easy to get into that. This is happening. What can I do? And again, I think just simple strategies, okay, just take a few deep breaths. Like I do personally, I forget to breathe, but I can remember to put my feet on the ground. So if I think I just put both my feet on the ground, and just doing that, then I then breathe. So sorry, my headphones are really going crazy today. Apologies if this is interfering with the sound at all.
No, it sounds fine.
So feet on the ground, because I think breathing is a funny one. It's kind of hard to remember to breathe when you're like so much is going on. So or sometimes if you've got a watch or smartphone or something, app or something where it does one of those lovely in and out breathing things where you have to follow it with your breath, you know, that's quite nice. But yeah, feet on the ground, I would say, is number one tip for the next few weeks. Both feet planted on the ground. It will just,
and breathing is a really good way of sort of calming your sympathetic system and activating your parasympathetic system. So I had a chap called Richard Husseini on the podcast a few weeks ago, and he is a sort of he's worked with people in the Olympics, you know, just about to go into really high stress environments, like just about to go snowboard or something like that, and using the out breath to calm everything down. So he talks about, you know, square breathing. So
square breathing,
out next, then in and then out. So that, and 7-11 breathing as well. But what's about square breathing?
Square breathing, a lot of doctors are using this. Marines use this. It's really great technique, and it's very simple. So you imagine a square, a bit like the screen we're using now, and you breathe in for 4, count of 4, then you hold for 4, then you breathe out for 4, and then you hold for 4. So in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, and then hold for 4. Really powerful technique to just, if you do that 4 or 5 times, you'll completely change your physiological state and just be able to function in a very different way.
So I was going to ask about this. I have noticed already that my heightened physiology from sort of Friday, Saturday has already calmed down a bit, probably because I did a workout this morning, which really helps. What am I going to be expecting now, that it goes up and down, or that actually now we're into more of the chronic stress, or what would you expect to see?
I think it's going to vary depending on what your situation is and what you're exposed to, but I think we're going to be in the first phase for quite a bit longer, for another few weeks. I think we're going to go in and out of feeling utterly exhausted and overwhelmed, and then getting a bit of recharge, and then a bit exhausted and overwhelmed, and then recharge. And I think that's going to be pretty normal. I think it's about trying to keep that within boundaries. So when you start to feel it's getting a bit too much, stepping back, you know, maybe taking a day off. And I know that sounds like the most impossible thing to do when we're facing such a crisis, but if you're not in a good place, you can't help other people, and we need doctors that are rested to be able to take over from the doctors that are absolutely exhausted. So you know, if you just need to step back for half a day, a couple of days, it's okay. You're going to come back in a much better resource that can then help other people to do the same. So it's a marathon, not a sprint.
And you do need to switch off when you have your days off. Do not spend the entire day looking at the news and looking through social media feeds. Just watch a film, read a book, read some sort of fiction, watch a box set, binge and watch Stranger Things. I don't know. Just do something to think about other stuff. And it's okay to do it.
Yeah, it is, absolutely. But be aware you're going to want to do those things, and you'll probably, like, you'll be watching a movie and then suddenly you'll find yourself, you're on your phone again, and it's like, what how did that happen? So just go, oh, okay, all right, I was told this was going to happen, okay, just pop it down again and just try and like refocus on what you're doing. It's going to be hard, I think, for people to fully switch off at the moment, but as much as you can, I think, just allowing yourself to is really important.
And it's okay to enjoy yourself.
Can
I say that?
100% you can. And you're saying it, and I sense the tone of voice you're using is because we feel a bit guilty, don't we? It's like, how can I be enjoying myself when I know my colleagues are intubating people right now, and or making decisions about who gets treatment and who doesn't, you know, those kind of, but it is absolutely okay to enjoy yourself. It doesn't mean that you're a heartless, horrible person. It doesn't mean that you don't care about those people. You are doing exactly what you need to be doing in order to help those people. Because if you are well and getting a bit of a balance and a bit of recuperation and a bit of joy in your life, then you can help them when they need it, and you can take over and let them go and enjoy their life when they need to. So it's not a selfish thing. Okay, we all interact, you know, and me looking after myself and having fun is going to help you, Rachel. You having fun is going to help the next person. And it goes, you know, collectively it helps each other. There's a lot of backlash at the moment I'm seeing from, you know, maybe doctors posting funny things online or making a joke about something, or and a lot of people going, this is really insensitive, how can you be joking about this at a time like this? But I think we need to have room for both, because otherwise we're not going to get through this. And we need the light relief, we need the joy, we need the happiness to balance out a bit of the other stuff that we're feeling.
So there is room for joy as well. Even with the sadness and the anger, we can feel joy, and that's okay.
I think that for me the take-home message is whatever you're feeling is okay. You know, if you're feeling quite relaxed and not too worried, great. Like, I mean, you know, chances are you probably will feel a bit anxious at some point, so enjoy it while you can. You know, if you're feeling pride, joy, love, you know, all these wonderful emotions, wonderful. You know, we all need a mix of emotions in our lives, and at times like this I find the bad emotions, all emotions are good really, but those difficult emotions, you know, the anger, sadness, all that stuff, the guilt, they seem to be met in equal sort of measure by the good stuff, right? I mean, how much amazing stuff are we seeing at the moment? Human acts of altruism and kindness and, you know, coming together. It's just wonderful. So, and that's the human spirit, that's the human condition, that we, even in our toughest times, we have our most joyful moments, and that is how it's meant to be.
Thank you, Caroline. That was really helpful for me, and I think helpful for the listeners as well. If I was to ask you for your 3 top tips for dealing with grief, sadness and anger at the moment, what would they be?
Feel the emotions. Yeah, I'm hearing a lot of people say, oh, don't be angry, don't be anxious, don't feel guilty. Actually feel it, because it's normal, and emotions need to be felt, I think. Anger and sadness. Anger, vent it, tap it off healthily. So try, experiment, have fun with it. Like, you know, I've got doctors who throw beanbags at walls. I've got doctors who bash bits of furniture with baseball bats. I've got, you know, all sorts of things. Do it safely, right? You do it safely, but just getting your anger out really safely, really important. The sadness, I think we need to feel it and we need to share it. And sadness is a tough one and it takes time. So, but we're in this together. Yeah. I think we're gonna collectively feel this sadness for some time. And I think it's okay to honor that, because we actually, we care. You know, we're sad because we care. We're sad because we love. Someone said, grief is the price we pay for love.
Yes.
Grief is the price we pay for love. It's true.
Yeah. My top 3 tips. I think, first of all, if you feel that your snow globe has been shaken, make some time where you can go, where it can just settle down, the snow to settle down. I think my second tip is make room in your life for joy. Really important. And thirdly, make allowances for others. And for yourself.
Amen.
Just give people, if they're a bit snappy and rude, that's fine. That's you absorbing that and not commenting on it and not holding it against them, is you doing your bit to help everybody.
Yeah, and we don't have to absorb it as ours, right? We can just we can leave it as theirs. Like, it's okay, you know. Yeah,
we are.
Wonderful.
Great. So
I hope that's helpful.
Well, it's been really helpful to me. Thank you, Caroline. So we will, I said, as ever, if you have an idea about what you'd like us to cover in the podcast, please comment, email, contact us on social media. However, we would love just this to be a space where people can find things that are going to be helpful for them. And if you've got some good resources to share, then let us know as well, and we'll try and get those out to everybody. So get in touch with us. Suggest things, comment, please share this video widely. You know, if you have colleagues, they don't need to be doctors, they can be anyone who is suffering at the moment who might like to hear this. And we will be back soon with another episode. So thank you, Caroline, thank you so much.
My pleasure. See you soon.
Yeah, bye everybody.